Thank you so much, David. Just confirming that you can hear me clearly and you can see my screen.
Yes, we can hear you and see your screen.
No, perfect. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Just by way of introduction, so I am the cybersecurity manager for Engine. Soon to start at a new organization, but I'll announce that at a future date. And then I'm also the founding president of the IAC2 Cape Town chapter. Just for the benefit of everyone, the Cape Town chapter is a non-profit really focused around building the community, upskilling people. We have events from time to time. So do have a look at it, check it out. If you're based in Cape Town, it's a good opportunity professionals. In terms of my background, manager for Engine Petroleum Cybersecurity for them. Before that, I spent 11 years at the Fushini Group, also built the first SOC for the Fushini Group. And then I hold a number of cybersecurity certifications, more than 30 to be exact. And I'm a good friend of the VID for the last couple of years and very fortunate to be here. I'll share some insights with you on AI and cyber. It's become a very hot topic and you will see that my take on it is slightly different. So I hope you appreciate the insights. I want to say off the bat that you are welcome to connect with me outside of this call. Reach out to me if you have any additional questions. But just feel free to connect and engage. So you'll see I added a subheading below that title, right? So it's AI and cyber risk, and people are saying, what are the cyber implications of AI becoming to the forefront? But I had a subheading there saying maintaining a state of cyber resilience, because ultimately, whether it's AI today and quantum computing tomorrow and blockchain the day thereafter, the purpose and the goal of cyber leaders is still the same thing. It's maintaining cyber resilience, protecting organizations, and it's very important that we don't take our eyes off what it is we're supposed to be doing. Now, the picture on your screen now, it's a dark alley, right? And there's a saying that says if you are about to meet a stranger in a dark alley for the first time, and your biggest fear is that a piano will fall on your head, then you have obviously failed to assess and evaluate the risks correctly. Because it's unlikely that's going to happen, right? If you're meeting somebody in a dark alley for the first time, you could get mugged, you could get robbed, a host of things can happen to you. A piano falling on your head is not one of it. And with AI, it's very important that we also say, what is the real risk to the organization? We hear people say chat GPT, people will upload files. Is that really a risk for us? Is that really a new risk for us? Uploading an Excel file to ChatGPT is not very different from someone uploading an Excel file to Gmail. So that's not a new problem for us, right? It's the upload of sensitive data to a web form. And it's important that we reflect on it so that we understand not all AI risks. And I say AI between inverted commas is new risks. Some of it is just rebranded for marketing purposes. And I will unpack that a little bit. But key point for now is we must understand what is the AI and implications to this, and I call it the great disconnect. And it says that throughout history, in the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, there's never been greater focus on cybersecurity than what there is. And a lot of money is being spent on protecting organizations. But at the same time, we see that the more we are doing, almost the worse it gets. You're seeing more cases than ever before. And the reason for this is twofold. In the past, we didn't pick up cyber attacks because we didn't have the data and we didn't have the right tools. Today, we miss these things because there's so much data, right? We're putting IoT sensors across the network. We're collecting logs from everywhere. And there's just too much to process, and then we miss things. The other reason is complexity. Historically, you had, I want to say local or campus area networks. You had a firewall. People came into a building and they worked, and you could kind of easily see who belongs on the network, who doesn't, and you could kind of map what is normal. Normal is people working from 9 to 5, doing certain things. Fast forward now to a post-COVID era, and people are working from Cape Town today, and tomorrow they're in a different country. They're working all hours of the night. They're working from different physical locations, coffee shops all over the place. So it's becoming very difficult to manage the complexity. And you see, I've got a picture of needles on the right, and you know the saying, finding cyber attacks used to be like finding a needle in a haystack. You could still identify it when you found it. Now it's like looking for a needle in a pile of needles. It's extremely difficult because things are becoming so advanced and so sophisticated. So what we want to do is we want to simplify things, and we simplify things by thinking of a house, right? And if we think of a house or any building, there's normally three layers. There's a roof, there's a building, and there's a foundation. And the roof represents what we call obvious things, right? Multi-factor authentication, patching, security awareness training, the things that we all know we must do. The structure is typically what we call the sexy stuff or the distractions. Now AI falls into that space, all right, because every vendor, every solution is saying AI this, AI that, right? And it's the flashy stuff. The challenge is we struggle to get the value out of this layer if the foundation is not right. And that is where we don't spend enough time. Typically I see we overlook the foundation because the thing with the items in the foundational level is when you do it well, nobody will say well done. So if you think of your stakeholders, your boards, your direct managers, right? If you have good governance in place, you've got good policies, your culture is there, you've got a solid strategy for the year, it's highly unlikely someone's going to come to you and say, well done on a good governance implemented, well done on great policies. People just don't give recognition to those things. But if you implement a new solution that's got a nice dashboard and it's doing some AI analytics, people are going to say, wow, that's really impressive stuff, right? Because that's what they can see. The challenge is if the foundational blocks is missing, we don't realize the value out of the layer above. So it is extremely important that we educate our stakeholders to say we have to spend resources, time, money on getting the foundation right. Now, and there's a lot of stuff that go into the foundation. Something like log management, for example, also lives in the foundational block because without a good log management program, you can't do advanced incident detection, you can't do forensics investigations, right? But people don't understand that effort has to go into those blocks. You have to spend a lot of money on building something like a good log management program. There's storage requirements, and only when you get it right, everything else falls into place. Okay, so it's important just for us to contextualize and visualize that the sequence is very important. We don't want to be investing in next gen technologies if we don't have governance in place, if we don't have a good policy governing how we're going to do AI in the organization. Now, this saying, I like this saying, and I'll explain now. But you know, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I want you to just really reflect on what I'm saying here. And when I present the following examples, just think about it. And you will then realize that a lot of the hype is actually just smoke and mirrors. Um, when we think of AI risk, all right, fundamentally we break it into three categories. So this is from an article that Philemon wrote in 2017. It's an ISACA journal publication, so quite reputable. And he wrote this in 2017, but you will see now when I explain it, he might as well have written it in 2025 because it's still relevant, right? Your first challenge is flawed algorithms. So all the AI solution systems algorithms developed by people, and people make mistakes, and these things can have some or other kind of flaw, whether it's biases built into it, misconfigurations, the way it's interpreting data. But fraud algorithms definitely something we must be aware of. And the way we manage that is we implement AI with our risk appetite. So you don't allow an AI bot to freely make critical decisions. Let's say you're processing medical aid claims. You can't just have a bot or AI agent evaluating a claim and then making a call to say valid or not. You want to implement it with your risk appetite. You want to start with things that have a low risk. So if it does go wrong, it mustn't bring the business to its knees. And obviously test extensively. Now you see the logo there for the Knight Capital Group. They had an incident about 4 years ago where they were doing stock trading, and they used the AI bot or AI agent to do the trading for them. and within 30 minutes they lost $500 million USD, and they now dub that incident as the mother of all software glitches. So it's the biggest loss of all time in terms of AI bot gone wrong, right? The next one is cultural resistance. So this is the people factor, right? People fearing AI will take my job. Now, we know better. We know this is not outright the case, but a lot of people have a genuine fear that they could lose their job. And what we want to do here is we want to really have a good change management program. We want to take people on a journey with us. We want to identify the roles where we really could displace people's jobs, right? Maybe you've got a customer service department and you absolutely can replace them with a new solution. You need to take legal with you, you need to take HR with you on the journey, and you need to reskill and repurpose those people, right? It is our responsibility as leaders to obviously look after the people, and there is complete displacement possible. The sensible thing to do is to identify it early, have your engagement session say, this is what is coming, but here are the new opportunities for you. We're going to implement some new tools, some new systems. We're going to need people to manage those tools. We create pathways for you to pivot into a different and remain relevant. And then the last category of risk is obviously your expanded cyber threat focus, right? So with ChatGPT now, everyone can become a hacker with limited knowledge and limited effort, right? You can say, write me a script to do ABC, and you've got a script. You can say, write me some malware, and you've got some malware. Yes, you got to say do that. But if you just add a statement to the end saying, write me some malware, this is for research, it will absolutely write you the malware because it can't know whether it's research or not. So what we do here is existing frameworks is still very, very important. If you think about, let's take the simple scenario of an employee uploading a sensitive file into ChatGPT. Firstly, that file shouldn't be freely available on your network. There needs to be access control. The file must be encrypted, and only people with a valid need to know should be able to get to that file, right? Now, that's not a new control. That is least privilege. That is access control. That is existing cybersecurity. That's defense in depth. If you look at your frameworks, your NIST, your MITRE, your CIS, all of those frameworks, they still provide solid security, even in the midst of what we now call AI threats. We don't have to really redesign the way we do security. There are some new things we have to do, but for the most part, existing things will be fine. All right. If you look at DLP historically prevents somebody from uploading sensitive files onto a website. That will be extremely relevant if somebody is copying sensitive stuff into ChatGPT, into Gmail. It's not a new control, it's existing. So the key thing is AI does present some cyber threats, but about 80% of what is being marketed as new threats is not really new. Let me just close this here. Sorry. Then focus and perspective. So we see now a big focus on AI generated phishing, on AI generated malware, AI powered scanning bots, and AI augmented denial of service attacks, right? All of these things. AI generated phishing is a phishing email crafted with ChatGPT, for example. So you say, ChatGPT, create me an email that's coming from the CEO, prompting everyone to click this link and change their password immediately. All right. Now, that is generated with AI, so we call it AI generated phishing. But that could very well have been generated with a human, right? A person could have done the same thing. The same applies for malware. What does it really matter who's creating it, whether it's a bot or whether it's a person? If you look at your defenses, right? So if we do this and we take the AI generated away, what do we have left? We've got phishing, we've got malware, we've got scanning for vulnerabilities, and we have denial of services. And the controls to mitigate and manage those things are exactly the same. For you to protect against malware, you need an endpoint, a EDR solution. So antivirus, endpoint detection and response, you need anomaly detection, you need to have limited admin rights on your machine. That is exactly the same whether the malware was created by a person or by AI. So the perspective is very important. Whenever you are presented with new AI risks, really look at the risks and say, is this new or is this fundamentally an old risk that is now just being remarketed as new? Okay, that's very important. There are some new risks that actually is brand new, right? And I will share some here. So biases in decision making. When AI models are trained, depending on the data they are being trained on, they could have a bias towards certain uh, uh, categories, and whether it's in terms of geographical regions, racial biases, gender biases. It all depends on the context. But biases in decision making is a real AI risk. Overfitting and underfitting. This is when we're training the models on either too much data or too little data. And when the model is then presented with the real life different data, it acts differently, right? So you're testing your model on training data and it's performing really well, but it's struggling when presented in operating environment with new data. It doesn't work too well. Automation failures. So obviously that's one of the powerful things in AI is to automate things. The problem is when things go wrong, it goes wrong at scale and at speed. So again, back to the first point I made, we need to apply these things within our risk appetite, and we need to gradually expand and test, but we cannot let it run free. On the adversarial side, we've got poisoning. So model poisoning is, again, we understand now that AI models learn based on the data they receive. So if you start feeding it data intentionally, you could poison that model to act in certain ways. Microsoft had an incident in 2016 already where they had a chatbot on Twitter. And what people did is they poisoned this model. And at some point, the model started responding to comments in a racist form. So it was being racist. And that's again because the model was poisoned in that way. Social engineering, one of the one thing AI does now is it allows you to be what they call hyper personal. So you can have bots that will do research on a target and it will craft a unique phishing email, for example, that's very specific to a person. All right. So it does allow this scavenging of big data sets to then craft, I want to say, lifelike and relevant scenarios for specific people. And then vulnerability identification. Again, it's got obviously the ability to scan large data sets and find those weaknesses within it. Emerging trends. So now on the defender side, right? How are we able to use this? And a lot of it is the same because on the malicious side, you've got criminals using it to find vulnerabilities. Naturally, on the defender side, we will use it as well to find vulnerabilities. So you will see that a lot of these things are being used for the same purposes on both sides. It's just the intent is different. So vulnerability identification, obvious that we would use it for the same reason. Threat intelligence. Um, with threat intel, the biggest problem we have there is large lots of information, lots of IOCs or indicators of compromise. And what the AI can do for us here is it can really sift through all the volumes and come back with these are the most important things we need to action quickly. So that's the power there. Network monitoring and detection. So back to my picture earlier, right? For a needle in a pile of needles, we cannot anymore quantify attacks using signatures. The variances is just too. And also, let's say you've got an employer working for you, no malicious intent, right? Something happens and the employee is no more happy with the organization. And overnight, the person that's been trusted and on the right path for the last 20 years becomes an insider threat, becomes an internal threat, right? You don't have a signature to pick that up. What you have is you have anomaly detection. So you can now immediately see this person has never in the last 2 years opened a sensitive file or mailed a sensitive file to Gmail, and suddenly the person is doing it. So now you're looking at deviations from normal behavior. And that's something yeah, is extremely good at, right? If you think of an organization with 4,000 users, manually we can't be monitoring what is normal and what is not. But with these systems, they can do it at scale. On the detection side, behavior analytics for users, for devices. Again, looking at deviations. If we look at phishing emails as well, phishing has evolved now from where there's a link and attachment. It's now, for the most part, it's text based. It's somebody sending an email saying, "Hi there, it's a CEO here. I need you to make an urgent payment." But the threat actors moved away from physical IOCs. There's nothing you can scan that will come back malicious. It's now all about context of the email, and that's again one of the strong suits of solutions, right? Malware is also an obvious one. Picking up malware, reverse engineering malware, looking at the behavior of it. So it's being used quite extensively in sandboxes now. Maybe also for me to mention here, we don't have to now become AI experts and implement a AI malware detection solution. What we need to do is, when we are looking at our solutions that we are implementing, we need to just evaluate to what extent they are using AI, because all of the big vendors, all of the big solutions, they are incorporating it. We want to just be sure that whatever we are investing in is also moving along with the times. So it's just good to have the understanding, but it's not for us to purposefully go and become experts in all of these domains. Um, on the recovery side, incident response, very, very powerful, very, very dangerous as well. Reason being, um, with incident response, things like blocking firewall ports, disabling accounts is all common actions to take. But again, you cannot allow any solution to do those things without human oversight. So what we do there is we're building workflows that will present an action to an analyst. So it will say, I did all the analysis, I found this, and the recommended action here is to disable the account to block the service port. A human will then approve the action. If you don't have human intervention, then you are at the risk of those things automatically disabling accounts at times and impacting the business. Augmented forensics analysis. Forensics, anybody who's ever been involved in investigation will know it's all about log data. So they'll come in and they'll look for logs, and there will be lots of volumes, and they have to go back 6 months, 8 months. And what they use these AI agents for now is just to point them to the right place. So, go through everything and just point us to more or less the right place. And then the experts will start zoning in there manually from there. But it's just about separating the noise from the real events. And then the last one is not really cyber related, but it's obviously predictive maintenance of any solution, really. So when used correctly, it can give us a view of which systems is about to fail, which disks is filling up, and then we can use it from there. Um, Now I want to talk to you about shifting from cybersecurity to cyber resilience, and why it's quite important. Historically, our focus was on security, right? And security in the sense of, let's protect the organization, let's prevent breaches, let's make sure that nobody can effectively hack us. But in recent years, we see that people have now shifted to resilience, and resilience is a different concept. It's a concept that says, if the worst happens, can we recover? And the reason why this shift was so important is because when you're focusing on cybersecurity, your board is asking the wrong questions. Your board will say, "Give me assurance that nothing will go wrong. Give me assurance we can't get hacked," right? And then when CISOs get those type of questions, the strategy is being driven in a way where they are heavily defensive, and they are trying to obviously give the assurance that we can't get hacked. When the board is saying, give me the assurance that we can recover, that's now going back to, do we have immutable backups? Do we test our backup procedures? Can we recover if we have a ransomware attack? So it's important to note that the lens the organization is viewing cyber through will drive the strategy effectively. All right. And what you want is a balanced approach. You want to spend on defense, you want to spend on recovery, you want to spend on detection, you want to spend across the spectrum, across the NIST cybersecurity framework. But I do believe that shifting from a security mindset to a resilience mindset holds a lot of value for any organization. Now, to get to that state of resilience, there's really 5 things that we have to take into account. So when you are building out your strategies or your tactical plans for the year, this is the 5 things you want to consider, right? You want to look at your global industry reports, like let's say between 5 and 10 global reports, reputable. Some of them could be from vendors. There are some vendors that have very good reports, and some could be academic or completely independent research. But you do want a view of what's happening globally, right? The problem is if you only look at that, then obviously you're not taking your own context into consideration. Then you focus on your organization. You say, in terms of my company, what does the last 18 months of assessments tell me? Now, this could be audits, security reviews, config reviews, penetration tests, any assessment done on your organization in the last 18 months. What are they telling you about the gaps you have? All right. And that's extremely important because you need a view of your actual exposure. Then you might have cyber insurance, you might have other standards and other assurance obligations. You want to look at what are they asking from you. If you ever fold in a cyber insurance questionnaire, it's a long list of questions and it's a yes, no parcel. And wherever you're saying parcel or no, you want to look at those things annually to say, do I maybe need to invest in these controls as well? Then this is extremely important one, and this one is often overlooked. Let me just get some water. This one is often overlooked. What are your business priorities? Now, let's say you're a cyber leader and you need to sit with your leaders and you need to get a view of what is the priorities of the organization. So let's in your context, we're talking municipalities, right? So let's say there's ambitions to roll out smart city projects in the next 12 to 18 months. Now, as a cyber leader or somebody responsible for cyber, when you sit with your and they say, look, we're rolling out smart CCTV cameras, smart sensors at the robots, smart everything, right? You need to then say, okay, so from a cyber perspective, what does this mean? This means we bring in OT. This means we need to now factor in for OT security. Do we have a standard on how we are buying these smart devices so that we don't just buy random devices, connect it up, and later discover these devices got no security built in. There's no way to manage them. It could, if you're working in a corporate space, it could be that your company is planning to open a new operating office in a different country, in which case new laws will apply. What is important is the business priorities can directly influence your strategy, whether it's smart cities, whether it's opening in a new country, whether it's opening a new store that's going to accept credit cards. You might have to be PCI compliant. It is very important to factor in what the business or the organization is planning and then map that back to what you should be planning for in your strategy. And then lastly is your regulatory requirements, right? Wherever you operate, what is required from you in terms of laws, regulations, and even standards. So if you are maintaining an ISO 27001 standard, you need to make sure that your strategy is taking that into account as well. So I'm briefly going to mention to you the three approaches that people typically take towards cybersecurity, just so that you are aware of it and you might identify where you're leaning towards. Um, the first one, we call it security theater, right? So security theater is things we do that adds no value. All right. So it just creates the illusion of security. In real life, you may have gone into a building. There's a security guard. The security guard will ask you to fill in a form or a book. You write anything in that book and you walk into the building. There's absolutely no security value there, but there's a security person standing at the door, and it creates that perception. In a security world, we do similar things, right? We send security assessment questions to our vendors. They fill it in. We don't validate the answers, and we file it away. It doesn't add any value, but we kind of do it. We scan for vulnerabilities week after week, but we don't fix or we don't patch. Again, it adds no value, but we have a lot of companies doing those things, right? And we call it theater. It's just being busy so that we look like we're being productive. Then there's a compliance mindset. That's where people are very focused on ticking a box. And again, with compliance, there's potential value there, right? Because if you do it right, you get to benefit from best practices. You have a standard communication language. People understand when you have, say, I'm ISO compliant, I've got a PCI certificate. There's a lot of value, but it's important to note your approach and perspective is important here. Not all compliance equals security, and people typically are very specific on the scope. So they'll say, I'll do a PCI certification or attestation, but I'm going to scope only this business process. Or I'll do a ISO, I'll scope only this business process in this location. So whenever you are evaluating certificates, just always look at the scope, physical location, what premises was assessed, what business process, what app. Um, and then there's obviously real security. Now, real security, much like the foundational blocks I discussed earlier, people typically don't say well done when you do this stuff. Now, real security is you're doing adversary simulations, right? Not pen tests where you've got a pen tester coming in for 5 days testing only one app. Adversary simulation is where you are hiring extremely experienced people. You give them 3 to 4 months, there's no scope, and you tell them, let's see what you can do. Because when you think about it, when criminals target you, they're not operating on a 5 day scope, looking only at one app. They're looking at everything and see how they can get in, right? Configuration reviews, firewall reviews. Um, we're doing phishing simulations. People fail the simulations. Are we going back to those who's failing repeatedly? Because if somebody's failing twice or thrice, obviously the training is not working. Obviously the culture is not right. But are we going back to those individuals to say, do we need to train them using a different method? So what I generally recommend is a balanced approach where you do a little bit of all three. You do want the theater because that's what people see, right? So you want to create the view with the stakeholders that I am busy doing something. You want to make sure that you are compliant with all of your obligations. But the real security is where you really, really need to spend the time and money because when hackers hack, that's where they're coming in. Right. Um, what I want to note here is language. So when we are engaging with stakeholders outside of the IT and security space, we sometimes tend to want to lead with the frameworks, the MITREs and the NISTs and those things, but we really should just lead with basic English statements, right? Business email compromise, payment forward, downtime of the platform, theft of IP. That's where we want to start, right? The frameworks are very important for us when we do our work, with our technical teams, but not for leading business conversations. Because when we lead with those frameworks, we lose the business, and then it becomes difficult to regain that buy-in when people don't understand what we're talking about. Um, I'm gonna share with you briefly the 6 pillars of cyber resilience. All right, so obviously underpinned by a good GRC framework. So governance, risk, and compliance extremely important, and then also understanding your active risk profile. So really knowing where are my gaps. You must have that view before you embark on this journey. Number one, embed security into the design. It's cheaper, it's cleaner. When you are buying a new product, ask the right questions up front. Does the product support integration into your Active Directory? Does it support MFA? Is data encrypted? Where will it be hosted? But whether you're building, whether you're buying, it's important to have your requirements up front. Basic controls, there are a couple of basic things we have to do. We need to patch, we need to have MFA, we need to have some monitoring, we need to train our employees, we need to do vulnerability management. There's basic things, about 10 of those things, right? We have to do it regardless of what industry we are in, where we operate, what framework we comply to. The basics are the basics and we need to do them because they call it basics for that reason, right? We now know humans is a big focus area. People are saying it's they're the weakest link. Most breaches are caused by people oversight. Whatever the viewpoint is, we need to have a really dedicated focus on managing our people and managing our culture. And I've got some whole different talk on that for future date. Or if you're interested, I can share insights with you there as well. Just connect with me. Focus on readiness and incident response. So again, we shifted from security to resilience. So the question is now not when or if it's when, and when it does happen, can we respond? All right. And that's why we need to have a pillar really focused on readiness, response, and testing our procedures. Vendor risk management, another critical area. focusing on third-party risks. We're seeing more and more data breaches being attributed to third parties. So we need to have a good program there. Again, that's also a whole separate discipline that we can unpack at a different time. And then continuous independent assurance, right? The old saying that we can't mark our own homework. So make sure that we're doing all the work, but we are getting independent experts in to make sure that what we're doing is right and what we have implemented is working as expected. Um, key questions just to think about when you are looking at implementing AI systems, right? How will it integrate with the rest of your ecosystem? All right. What specific challenges are you solving? It's very important. We know the saying, when the only tool you have is a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail. We don't want that situation. We need to look at the risks of biases, false positives. We need to consider privacy and compliance. Again, AI is sifting through lots of data, lots of touch points, and inevitably it's going to be looking at private data, at employee data. So we need to manage that. And then we need to look at the total cost of ownership, for managing it, for supporting it, the staff, ongoing update to the models, but we need to also factor these things in. Just some considerations. Um, One thing that I also want to say is when we are looking at automating processes, AI is not for level one and level two, right? When we start looking at automation, augmentation, implementing AI systems, it really starts happening as we go into level 4 and 5. We cannot automate bad processes. It needs to be as part of a maturity curve. So that's quite important as well to know that it's about timing. And then I want to share with you as I'm closing off now, and a technology adoption framework, right? And it's not AI. You can actually replace the word emerging technology with AI, but you can also replace it with quantum or blockchain or anything, right? Anything new that's coming. This is kind of the process we want to follow. Number one, you want to have your policy, your oversight. You want to make sure you've got a committee of experts in the business, or whether it's consultants, but you want to have some people that know a little bit about the technology that is able to guide the organization. All right. You want to do some training and awareness. People need to know there's something new coming. What are the do's and don'ts? You can't just assume your people will figure it out. They will make mistakes. So let's take ChatGPT as an example. Are they allowed to use it? Yes or no? If the answer is no, you block it. If the answer is yes, you train them to say you can use it, but you should not do the following. Don't paste things in there. Don't do this. This is what you can use it for. It's important that we don't assume people know, but we are very clear on what the expectations are. Then we look at our security safeguards. So I mentioned DLP, access control. How are we applying security controls to this new technology? Industry leadership and engagement, things like this today. We participate in webinars, we go to conferences, we speak to other leaders, but we cannot sit in our own bubble and figure things out. We need to engage with other departments, other organizations, and industry to see what is coming, what solutions are out there, what struggles are out there, and how can we learn from that. And then incident management. Now, not incident management like we know it, because AI will present new incidents. So I mentioned earlier, you've got a chatbot that's responding on social media, and the chatbot is responding in a racist manner, right? Oh, we've got somebody speaking. Okay. If you think of the example I made, where an investment firm is losing a lot of money because a chatbot went rogue, that's an incident. And how do we respond to those incidents? Who's involved in the response? It could be that you need to have HR there, you need to have legal there, but we need to start anticipating what are the new types of incidents and how can we respond to that. In closing, I want to just share with you this picture, right? For those who's based in Cape Town, I took this in Hermanus. Yeah, so I was walking along this path, and then I saw two things, right? I saw a path on the right, which is obviously paved out, and I saw a path across the grass with people everybody was walking across the grass. That's why you can see there's a path, right? And nobody was walking on the paved path. And this got me thinking, in organizations, we build out our frameworks and our policies in a way that theoretically makes sense. But then what happens is people don't follow it, right? People do their own thing anyway. So what we need to do is we need to understand why are people walking over the grass. I can tell you the trees are hanging very low on that paved path, right? So if you walk through there, it's actually very uncomfortable. That's why nobody does it. So when we are building policies and security in mind, it's important that we build it for the real life, and we say, regardless of best practices, if I want people to walk on the path, then I should make sure that the path is convenient to walk on. All right. We shouldn't say, let's do a 18 character password because NIST says so. But then half the user base doesn't have a decent phone to manage these passwords properly, or there's no key vault. It's important that we understand that strategy is how we play, and governance in culture is ultimately how we win. So on that note, I want to say thank you, and I probably want to open up for one or two questions if there are. But like I said, you are welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn anywhere, and we can just further the conversation there. Over to you, David.
Thank you very much, Grant. Thank you for everybody that attended. I would just like to make an arrangement. There were 3 questions